Shasisu lawasenu bayamim mahem bazman hazeh. We say in Al Hanisim in Chanukah, we commemorate the Nisim that the Rebbeinu Shalom performed lawasenu bayamim mahem bazman hazeh, in those days and in our days as well. And then we continue on and say bimei matisyo. We continue on and say bimei matisyo kain gadol the chashmanoim. Why the repetition? We already have said, and we introduced the Al Hanisim with the Nisim Sha'asisa Lavoisenu Bayamim Mehem. So why the emphasis on Bimei Matisyahu? We commemorate on Chanukah, we commemorate the great nes of Hadlakas HaNeres, that the Ner lasted, the Shemen lasted for 8 days. But that's quite puzzling, because there were so many Nisim that Hashem performed for Klal Yisrael throughout the generations. Many, many, many Nisim, and we don't have a whole Chag centered around those Nisim. There were many, many Nisim that occurred, and even in the Beis HaMikdash there were many Nisim. We know that the Arna Kodesh, Chazal tell us, Eina Min Amida, it didn't take up, it didn't consume any physical space. There were 10 Nisim that occurred in the Beis HaMikdash on a regular basis. The lechem upon him was always warm, was always hot, as if it came right out of the oven. Even after a whole week, it felt as it just came out of the oven. Even in shemen, even in oil, there was a nes, at least during the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, with the oil. Every day they had a nes with the shemen, with the ner. The ner ha'ma'aravi was the first one that they lit, and it was the last one to be extinguished, to go out. It had the same amount of oil as the other neres. The other neres were lit afterwards and extinguished first. The ner ma'aravi b'nes continued on burning after all the other candles, even though physically, based on the physical properties, it should have been extinguished first. It continued, and it lit longer. There was a nes of shemen every day. And even in quantity, there was this great nes by Chanukah that this pach shemen lasted for 8 days, but we have by Elisha Novi, he had this tiny little bit of oil. And through the nes, it filled up container and container and container of oil, a huge abundance of oil, that through the nes, it filled up all of these containers until they had no more containers to hold all of the oil that b'derech nes, it filled up all of these containers. Why dafka the nes Chanukah? We say in benching, we have midaraisa and atayra, there are 3 brachas in benching. But the Rabban and the Chachamim added a 4th one. Years later, they added a 4th bracha in benching. We make the bracha v'toiv v'meitiv, commemorating the nes of Harugi Beitar, that they were nitna l'kvura, that those killed in Beitar were able to be buried, shlo yisrichu, and they found a burial. Davar Pele. What does that mean? Of all the Nisim, we commemorate Harugi Beitar, and that's what we should mention in benching? Why is that part of benching? Daily sustenance, we eat the bread, we thank Hashem in benching, Birchas HaMazon, we thank Hashem for the food, we thank Hashem for Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim. Why is Harugi Beitar, why is that part of our daily benching? But based on the Meshech Chochmah, there's a very important principle underlying this. That Klal Yisrael they were accustomed to many great nisim. They were accustomed to the Hashpa min Hashamayim, the Ashras HaShechina. But after the Churban Habayis, there was a feeling of yush, despondency. There was a feeling of Yush that the Rabbeinu Shalom had abandoned them, that they were forsaken, that those nisim, those miracles would never occur again, that they were abandoned by the Rabbeinu Shalom, and never again would they see the Yad Hashem, the glory of Hashem, the Hashkafa, the nisim, the niflois of the Rabbeinu Shalom. And in the depths of their darkness, in the depths of their despondency, there was a nes of Arugei Beitar. After the Churban, after it seemed that all was lost, there occurred this great miracle, which teaches us the fundamental principle that it's never all lost, and the Rabbeinu Shalom is always with us. The Rabbeinu Shalom is always with us. In the Torah it says, "V'anoichi haster aster ponai v'yom." There will be a golus. Rahman al-Islam, there is a golus. The Rabbeinu Shalom says, "I will be hidden. I'll be hidden from you." Zok the mabit. Hester implies something which is there, but it's concealed. You can't see it, but it's there. The Rabbeinu Shalom says, "Anoichi haster aster ponai." I'm going to conceal myself, but I'm there. I'm with you in the golus. I'm with you in the darkness. I'm with you in the chayshech. The chayshech. Then there will be yor. Then there will be oyer in the chayshech. The chayshech, the Rebbeinu Shalom is iti, is with me. And this is what we saw by the nes of Arugei Beitar. By the nes of Chanukah, was a time of chayshech, was after the great years and the glory of Bayis Rishon. And Bayis Sheni, those miracles ceased. At the time that the Yevonim overtook the Beis HaMikdash and overtook the land, injecting tumah throughout the land, it was a time of chayshech. And there was a time of Yush. And through the Mesiras Nefesh of the Chashmonaim, and through their Rotzain, there was this great nes. And that demonstrates and that shows that even in the Chayshech, even in the time of Hastaras Panim, even in the time when one might be Meyayish, there's no room for Yush, the Rabbeinu Shalom is there, it's always present. And so we commemorate specifically this nes of the Shemen. There were other great nisim of Shemen. There were other many, many great nisim, but this shows us, and it's mechazik, fortifies us to show us that even in the times of greatest chayshech, the Rabbeinu Shalom is with us, and He still looks after us, and He's watching over us, and nisim are still possible. My shver shlita, Avram Bliman Shlita, went through many of the camps, and he had a good friend. He had a good friend of Yosef Friedenson, Zatzal, who used to say over the following story in the concentration camps, that Pesach was approaching, and they desperately wanted to have matzah, so they approached the commandant, and they asked for some wood to build a little furnace, a little bit of flour, so that they can make and bake their matzahs for Pesach. And he begrudgingly agreed, and he let them do it. And they gathered up some wood, and they scrounged around for some flour to bake matzahs for Pesach. And then he lost control of himself. This Nazi lost control of himself. And he started screaming at them and yelling at them. He said, "You foolish Jews! You stubborn, foolish Jews! Don't you know that your God has forsaken you? You're alone in these camps. You're dying. You're a dying race. And now you're scrounging around, you're looking to bake your bread. This is what you're doing now? Your God has forsaken you. He's left you." And Rabbi Yosef answered back, not completely, and not forever. And years later, that Mesiras Nefesh, the Mesiras Nefesh of those who rebuilt, showed with the very clearest eye that we are never forsaken, never completely.